Thanks for coming back to watch some more chess. It has been a rough go on my chess games for a little while. I've dropped below 1800, it looks like. Definitely. So I'm going to try and recover a little bit here. This fella has beat me once before, so let's see if I can claw my way back up. I've peaked on chess.com at around 1950 or so. It's been a while back. My over the board rating USCF is plateaued just below 1800. There are times where I can play with 2000 level players, and then there are times where I play down to lose games that I shouldn't, and I just need more consistency to maintain a high performance level. So we've got a my opponent declined the mainline Alekhine, and I went into this Scandinavian type setup. If he takes my knight, I take back with a pawn, and my pawn is doing a great job keeping his knight out of a natural square, and his pawn is pretty easily targeted. So he's opened up this diagonal for me now. So I think developing here, e6, allowing my queen to come out, but e6 and then knight takes, pawn takes, and this is fairly well defended. What if I take the knight? What if I don't let him take anymore? Because if I, after this push, this pawn isn't so easily targeted. And if I have a pawn up here, that's going to be a weakness. So I think I take the knight. And then lets him open up and get a little bit of a lead in development. But it's playable. So the real question here is, do I want to develop my bishop outside of a pawn chain? If I do, I think it just gets met with bishop d3. Maybe even with g4. That seems very ambitious, but I think my bishop gets kicked around a little bit if I do that. And I don't want to take his bishop and allow him to undouble his pawns. It's the only slight advantage. I don't think I have an advantage here. I think white has the advantage, but the only thing I'm working with is double pawns that might resemble an advantage. White has more space. White has a lead in development, even though no pieces are out. His bishops are prepared to come out. And I only have one bishop prepared to come out. So it is black to move, though, so I can equalize that development of the space. I think I go here. I think my game is going to be to try and work against these pawns. Now, I have the option of going bishop c5, and he's going to have to do some work to tuck his king away. He can kick, but I retreat. You can block my bishop's line of sight with the knight. I can retreat and kick. I think I like that bishop c4 idea. There's no queen g4 threatening g7, bishop c5. Another idea might just be to push c5. Keep the knight out of there. What's the knight's purpose there? Aside from blocking the diagonal, there's this push maybe? The f5 push. I do spend a lot of time in the opening trying to devise plans, and it usually pays off. I'm usually fairly good in the opening, but I feel panicked if it gets down to an end game. So that is a flaw that I can work on with my chess game. So I'm going to stop overthinking it. I'm going to develop bishop to e7 along this diagonal. Okay. And now I think I do like the c5 push because I can gain a tempo against the bishop. And he wants to stop that tempo gain. The pawn does a great job occupying, attacking this square. So let's develop the knight, get a piece out. Try not to overthink it too much. This pawn's weak. But if I attack it immediately and directly, he develops and protects it. Hmm. 1, 2. If I push d4, I have 1, 2, 3 defenders of d4. He has 1, 2 attackers. He can bring his bishop in. I can take, he can take. I don't know what I've gained there, really. Open D file, but that benefits him as much as it does me. These bishops look pretty fierce over there. I've had many attacking ideas that look very similar to that. So I'm hesitant to just castle straight into it. But I develop the queen to b3, threaten this discovery here. I go queen b6. He goes bishop e3. Then do I have d4? Takes. 1, 2 defenders. 1, 2. He backs the bishop off. And then I bring the bishop in. Let's do that. I like that because if he does back his bishop off this way, that's one less piece that's aimed kingside. And I do want to castle, but right now I feel like my king is safer in the middle. Because there's no breaks to immediately open up the center. So he gets his king off. Okay. Backs his king off of the diagonal. Tucks it away in the corner. Doesn't commit to this. Can I go here anyway? Doesn't attack the bishop, but does this weak pawn. It allows him to undouble. Does allow him to undouble. When I say that out loud, it kind of hurts my soul a little bit. And he just develops his bishop. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If he wants to take, I have adequate defense. So let's continue developing, just so that if I take back with the knight, I have the bishops prepared to go to the long diagonal. This pawn's feeling a bit overextended, though. If I do take back with the pawn, it's feeling a little weak. I'm going to have to get a rook behind it. Okay. It's a pretty blatant threat of just kicking my queen around. I don't want that move, so I need to play a5 to stop it. My nose has been super itchy today. So what's his ideas now? I mean, it seems very reasonable for white to take here. He gets to undouble his pawns. Potentially stick me with an overextended, undefendable pawn. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So he's threatening to take here. Here, he's already threatening to take here. I think I need to take here. I need to take on c3 to avoid losing material. 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers. 1, 2, 3 defenders. So that's just simple math. But I have to be careful about moving this knight because the bishop and the queen line up. I can't castle immediately either because the bishop would hang, so I need to put some protection on that bishop. Now the knight is free to move, or I can castle. And on both. Well, now I can't do both because he's moved the queen. There's no more ominous looking bishops over here with the queen, so I feel a lot more comfortable about castling. If I were him, I'd bring a rook to d1. One, two, 1, 2. Attacking the d4 square. Right now, I could move my knight there and attack the queen. He wants to swing his bishop around and threaten mate. So what's my answer to that? G6 looks pretty reasonable. G6. Ideas of knight G5. Do I have this move now? He does have 3 attackers on this square, but I have 1, 2. Once I move this, there's an attack on the bishop. So he'd have to swap off bishops, and I get the rook as a defender as well. Or he leaves the bishop and I take a bishop, and I still get the defense. And I'm whittling time down. Still. Okay. He gave up the light square bishop. I did not expect him to do that. He's got knight g5. I can take. And we go into a knight versus bishop with 2 rooks. There's lots of pawns on the board though, so I'm not daunted by the fact that I've got the knight. The knight can be very useful here. Lots of clutter still on the board. I might also have this idea of retreating the knight. If he does go knight to g5, maybe knight f5, blocks the queen, but g4, and I can't move the knight because mate is threatened. So I would have to take the knight. You'd have a choice of taking the bishop or the knight. That is pretty committal and weakening, though. But what's the knight really doing over here? Okay. Um, H4. Is that bait? Is he trying to bait me? If I take the knight, he takes with the rook. I try to grab a free pawn. He swings his rook around. And then suddenly the rook and the queen both look at h7. So that is not a free pawn. That is a worm on a hook. Nothing says I can't take the knight without taking the pawn, though. Leave him with a bad bishop. Dark square pawns inhibit his bishop significantly. I could threaten a queen trade. While the knight could still come back to capture it. Not have to double my pawns. Oh, this threatens a fork, though. That's a nice... Yeah. Royal fork. You can't get back to defend all of those except with the king. He can come here with the king. Oh, yeah, that's a move too. Neglected to consider that move. But that's a awkward square for his bishop. I think I can think about stacking rooks. Seems reasonable. Let's try to do that without wasting too much clock. So the bishop is committed to this diagonal because there's this fork. Wonder if there's any ideas where I can deflect the bishop. Push this pawn, sack it. Bring the bishop here. Take the pawn with the queen, no. That gives me another fork. If he takes with the queen, I have another fork. So if he takes with the pawn, I attack the bishop. Maybe he can pin the bishop to the queen. Okay. Three minutes and 45 seconds. I'd love to find a way to deflect this bishop. I don't have this fork anymore, though, so if I push the pawn, bishop's guarding this. Get our queen off that diagonal at the very least. I was wondering if he was going to be tempted by that move, just to force my knight out. Well, that seems like a victory, even though I didn't get the fork. It's still, that king's pretty exposed. So now we might have a trade of pieces. 2 minutes and 8 seconds to his 9. Okay, he's got a mate threat, which I can answer by taking the knight or pushing g6. I need to decide quickly. I'm going to start with g6. Gives him ideas of continuing to push, but then I can take. Turned on notifications and I'm regretting it. So many messages. All right, I've got to choose. I've got to do something. But what? He's cut this off. We have this. Do. Resuming my fork threat. He can't come here to defend it. Lift the rook. He can bring the bishop back. Check. So I'm going to get the exchange. I'm not out of the woods, though. He's got this cluster around my king. He might have ideas of sacking here with the queen. So I think I take the exchange. And then maybe I get the knight off the board. Yeah, okay. I just take the knight. Trying to move quickly to gain a little bit of time back. So I'm under 2 minutes. Need to gain a little bit. Might look at swapping rooks off the board here. It's not a cakewalk because I'm going to give up this pawn. Am I? I'd love to just trade off queens and go into a bishop versus rook endgame. Be easy to make a rapid succession of moves to gain clock time. Now he's got to consider what he's doing here. Certainly not a guaranteed win, particularly with all these dark square weaknesses around my king, and he has the dark square bishop. If he plants his bishop there, my king isn't going to get in the game. Okay. He doesn't want to trade. I can check. My queen coordinates nicely there. He can't block. Gonna have to bring his king over. Now if I bring my queen, he can block with the rook. But then I check here. Yeah, I think I've got a nice little net here now. Only move. Queen here, check. And mate. He should have taken the trade, I think. He should have traded rooks, because now it's mate. He had decent chances if he could plant his bishop on this diagonal and just box my king in. There's nowhere for my king to go. He's got 4 on 4 with pawns. My rook divides the board, but a rook versus a bishop is not a given. There's only one move for you, fella. Sorry. Good game. You, yeah, he beat me once before. Feels good to get redemption against a player that I lost to previously. Yeah, it's forced. Only move, check. Only move, mate. I do hope that he's not going to run the clock out on that. Seeing a forced checkmate. I mean, complete respect if he's actually racking his brain trying to calculate a way to get out of it. But if you see that it's forced, please resign. Or let me play it out, one of the two. Just good sportsmanship. Well, I suppose I can go back in the game a little bit and just try and figure out the analysis beforehand. And he's going to disconnect. He's disconnected. Rage quitting. Let's make sure he didn't. No, he didn't move. So that's top. Okay. This looks like a pretty equal game. White has more space. But black's position is okay. Symmetrical pawn structures, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and playable game of chess. I wasn't sure why he did queen e2. That is an attempt to eye this h7 square. So I felt like he could have followed through with. Why not just retreat the bishop, make your threat, force me to push. So did he have to take the bishop? Is that I don't think he has to take the bishop. I don't think this is a better use for it. White's on the attack. So he abandoned the game. White's on the attack there, and if you don't have to trade pieces, the more pieces you have on the board helps your attack. So you're just kind of limiting your own options if you're going to trade pieces. It's definitely a time and place to trade pieces, but not when you're on the attack. You want to keep material on the board. Okay. Was that a good move? White has a 0.7 edge here. Half a pawn. Nothing crazy. I did not like my pawn push in the middle. Was that a mistake? And I see why after the game, like he had the opportunity to trade off his doubled pawns, which is the only thing I could even consider remotely weak. And it leaves me with an extended pawn that is not defendable by another pawn. This pawn is blockaded and can't come to its defense. This pawn will only be defendable by pieces, which is generally a bad deal. You want to use your pieces for attack and not defense. So I'm going to have pieces tied up in the defense of that pawn. Wasn't a good move. So what do I do instead? What are my better options? Perhaps just simple development. There's only one square available for the bishop. So about that. Why sometimes does it tell me if it's... Oh, because I didn't click the retry. That's why. So I'm going to retry that. Say the bishop development. It's a better move. And it's a good move. It does call it a good move. What is the best idea? Really? Okay. Take your word for it. Stockfish. I mean, I guess that prevents this push. Because before he has this option and I can take, and he can't take back. I'm not sure why this move. I think I might run into a Greek gift if I castle immediately. So I was right not to castle. I don't believe that's a good move. I'll have to look at that move more and understand it a little better. Anyway, it's better than this one. And he was wrong to not take it. He should have taken. Just to be clear, white should take. C takes d4 is best. I should have taken and not allowed him the opportunity to take again. So that's why that's a mistake. He still should take. This is still a standing option that he should have engaged in. This was a mistake. This was a flat out mistake. I should have taken. I have a retreat with queen, so this really isn't the end of the world if he does push. And it's a bigger deal if I get stuck with this undefendable pawn. Thumbs up, finally. Finally, I did what the computer was asking me to do. Although I was saying I played like a 2200, so I did a few things right. Likes my knight move. It likes his bishop trade as well. Thought that might have been a mistake. Has a 0.6 edge here. But why can't he just go here? I guess this does stop that threat in its tracks. There is no threat anymore. So it's a pretty futile idea. But it still seems like you want to keep pieces on the board if you're white. You have a ton of space. You're on the attack. And I don't know. If I'm white, I want to keep pieces on the board. Maybe this is a better move. Just out of curiosity, what does it rate this move? So he doesn't lose much of an edge. He still has an edge with this move. Thinks he should have taken the knight. Okay. Back to our review board. And that was a mistake. That gave black the edge. And it's because of this fork idea here, which I took a while to see, but I did find it. That's a mistake. Should he have guarded with the king? It's the only other defense. This move it disconnects the rooks, so I understand why it's a questionable move, and defending with the king is probably better. So let's retry that for white. King h2 is best. Was a miss. My rook development is a missed opportunity. I go back to 0.1 advantage after this move. How do I take advantage of this? Maybe push this pawn immediately. d4 is best. This is the best move. If he takes with the queen, I have this queen rook fork. If he takes with the pawn, then what? Suppose I have this bishop development here with the idea of cutting off the bishop's protection of this square. Okay. I remember looking at that move. I don't remember how much consideration I actually gave it, but I recall looking at it. Then we're back to a dead even game here. Queen c7 is an inaccuracy. Don't understand the full reason behind that move. To prevent that move, I guess. To prevent g4. It's questionable. It's going to prevent a mate. That's a mistake. And that's a miss, even though it gives me this fork again. He can defend the fork by retreating the queen. It's my best idea here. Take the knight. Nope. d4. Okay. If takes, queen takes. If pushes, bishop takes. So takes, takes. Gets the queen to an active square. I could get behind that. I don't know that I would have played it in the game. Blunder. Because he gave me the fork. He could have retreated the queen and protected everything. And I have a 3-point edge from here on out at least. Now he's given me mate and 4. 1, 2. He doesn't allow me to play it out. Okay. That was a satisfying game. Had a couple of rough ones, but I'm glad I was able to get this win. Thank you for stopping in to watch. Tune in for some more chess.